Good morning. How is everyone doing today? I hope you're doing well. All right, so we have a lot to talk about. I'm going to have to be kind of quick because, if it wasn't a day in the life of Merrick Counts, I wouldn't have a medical emergency. Thankfully, it's not a human, it's just a cat, which is way better, but still gonna have to take probably gonna have to take him in. So, anyways, gonna do this kind of quick so that I can hit the vet opening up in the morning. All right, so let's talk Okta. Actually, before we talk Okta, let's clear some stuff up. First, I represent my own opinions here. Nobody pays me to represent them, and I don't represent anybody. Hopefully that's clear. Nobody in the past, present, or future. And nobody pays me to say this. So, now that that's out of the way, let's talk what you can expect. If you're new here, this is just a place where we hang out and we talk about the things that have happened in the week past. This is basically like live streaming Twitter. But yeah, and you get to see my opinion on it. Some. Not sure what that's worth, but that's what you get. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about what happened with Okta. Hey, Russell, welcome to the news this week. All right, I bet most people know what happened with Okta already. That's my assumption, but yeah, let's talk about it. We have here an officially released timeline from Okta. And I think that this part right here is what really has people angry. I think it's important to understand that breaches will happen. My favorite one is to point at Cloudflare. Cloudflare's had breaches of types, and they do a defense in depth, security as an onion of layers. So none of their breaches have been super serious. But yeah, Okta had a breach. And the problem was, there was 2 months. 2 months where they were just like, no, you guys don't need to know about this. Nobody really needs to know about this. And that's the big deal here. It's not that there's a breach. I don't think anybody expects anybody to be perfect and for breaches not to happen. But yeah. But if you want to see who's really good about responding to breaches, responding to failures, it would be Cloudflare. And do you know who provided better details than Okta? It was Cloudflare. Cloudflare's response to this, because Cloudflare actually uses Okta, is fantastic. Not only is, you can see it was released on the 22nd, so all of the data, all of this stuff was done in let's see, the same day. The same day at 3:30, Lapidus released those. Cloudflare's already released a response. Not only does the response detail what they did, but it details what you can do in the type of response as well. You can see here at 3:30, they received their first warning of the existence of the tweet, which is amazing. 3:30, notice, at 3:30, they knew the same minute. That's pretty amazing. All right. So, and then this details a timeline by minute, unlike Okta's, which is a timeline by month. They don't even get into the times until in March here. Not only this, I actually really do recommend you read Cloudflare's blogs. I really do. Because they go into how they dealt with it, how they made sure that there was no further breach, and it comes down to even things like this. Okta only provides the last 90 days of logs, so guess what? Cloudflare has a policy of downloading all of Okta's logs already, prior to this. So, the last 90 days provided by Okta dashboard. So they already had all of the logs because they didn't trust Okta's system, which was amazing because it allowed them to search past before the official breach. So, anyways, I think that Cloudflare does a really good job, and I mean, their whole thing is security, so like I'm glad, but they do a really good job of laying out how a breach happened and how they've handled it in the same day. Same day, we're talking still. So, really cool. Definitely should read Cloudflare's response to the breach because it's definitely worth reading. Other than that, you can find a lot of people upset about it, and I like this thread by Jake Williams because first, let's acknowledge that Okta itself is a victim, and the breach happened, and it happened. It actually, this same attack hit several large companies. Okta isn't the only one that they hit. We're talking about Microsoft, Sony, and Samsung are some of the ones that I know. So again, it's not that Okta had a breach. It's the fact that Okta pretty much hid it for the most part. And you can see that in their timeline, Okta's internal report, didn't get finished until an hour and a half after. It was, I don't know how they pronounce their name, Lapras. If they'd like to join me on a chat, probably get them some jail time, but I might be able to pronounce their name correctly. So, anyways, that's what happened. So that's how not to handle a security response, especially when you handle authentication of users. I guess I would consider Okta the same as Cloudflare. You handle authentication and security. I have you handle my users' logins because I don't trust myself to do it. Not because I can't do it. I just don't trust myself to do it securely. And that's like one of the cornerstones of your applications is your users and how they log in. And that's where they failed. So anyways, this is also a good thread. He goes into detail about, why we're upset with Okta. Not that Okta got hacked. It's how things were handled after it became clear they had been compromised. So, anyways. And yeah. Another good blog on just how they mishandled the situation. All right. So, yep. If you use Okta, if you're using Okta, you need to make sure that you haven't been compromised. If you're wondering how you might do that, Cloudflare's blog is a really good one. Really good one. So, just again, this is what Microsoft tracks the criminal activities under, the Dev 0537. They always, so actually sometimes Microsoft tracks them before they have an official name. So it's always interesting because you get these. This is actually Lapras. Microsoft also found out that they had been breached. And this is their report on it. This was, I don't know, maybe not same day. I think that this was a couple days after their breach, but it's a pretty detailed explanation. So another really good article to read if you're just wondering, these are hard. It's like you run your car over your neighbor's mailbox, and you have to go tell them that you ran over their mailbox. And it's embarrassing because you ran over their mailbox, and it's dumb. But in the end, you just need to go tell them that you ran over their mailbox and killed their cat. Like, hiding it only makes it worse. That's the big deal. Like, it happens. You accidentally run. I don't know. I've never accidentally run over somebody's mailbox, but I mean, like, this type of crap happens. I've inadvertently, accidentally hurt people, and you have to go say sorry, and it sucks, and it's not great. But the thing is, you need to go say you're sorry, and then say how you're taking precautions not to run over their mailbox and kill their cat again. Like, I'm taking a defensive driving class or something like that. Whatever it is to say that you're going to try to learn from your mistake, do that. So, Javier, hey, it's been a while since I've seen you live. It's awesome to see you. Thanks for joining. Awesome to see you. That being said, this group has been, not only is there a suspect for it, but it seems like the UK police are closing in on this group, which has I've tracked them over the last couple of months through their Samsung and whatnot. Sony was another one. Nvidia was another one. Actually, the Nvidia one was interesting. The Nvidia one was interesting because Nvidia actually like hired somebody to like track them down and basically try to encrypt the data that was stolen from them, and then it turned out they leaked the data or something like that. It was a little bit interesting, kind of a little kerfuffle there. Definitely kind of funny to watch. Lapras, I keep putting an R in there. There's no R. Lapus, Lap. No, that's wrong too. Anyways, I can't pronounce their name. Lapsus. That I should have tried this before going live. Lapsus. Anyways, they have been a thorn in everybody's side except for Russia's side. I don't think they've attacked Russia yet, but I don't know. Maybe they have. But yeah. Anyways, then they leaked Nvidia stuff. So yeah, that's it for that though. All right. So let's jump. I guess that's pretty much it for that drama. I don't know. I honestly, we've been looking at providers for authentication ourselves at a company that I work for, and after last week, I put in the recommendation not to work with Okta because of how they've handled it. Not that there was a breach. Again, that happens. But I don't know that if I didn't already have systems built on it, I probably wouldn't be using it or wouldn't trust them at this point. I don't know. That's the trust in your cloud providers, your third party. They're basically a contractor for you, and you're trusting them with your users and things like that. I take that very seriously. I think everybody should. When you make an application, look, we're not all security experts. I'll be the first to say that I'm not. But you do get a certain amount of trust with your users' data, your users' things, storage. And we got to take that seriously. We got to take our users' trust seriously. And that involves just saying, hey, I screwed up. So let's take that trust seriously. On that, we have two more security things. The first is this. Google has updated their stable channel for desktop for Google Chrome. Is this the end of Google Chrome? Like, I know that I'm using Chromium right now. Right now I'm using Chromium. But it keeps happening. I don't know how. Maybe it's JavaScript, but it keeps happening that they have these emergency high CVEs. I guess the thing is, nobody cares. Nobody cares with your web browser that it's less secure than another one. I know on my personal machines, I've started using a Brave browser. Seems pretty good so far. And there's a couple other ones that are out there. I don't know. But it keeps... And I don't know that those aren't more or less vulnerable, because honestly, a lot of them use the same core engine for rendering. I don't know that this isn't in the rendering engine. I'm not that well versed in it. So yeah, I don't know. It keeps happening. But this means you need to keep your browser patched, period. No matter what browser, and I've seen a lot of Firefox ones as well. You need to keep your browser patched. It's definitely an attack vector. All right, malicious NPM packages. Guess what? I don't know why I even report on this, because I think that you can't trust NPM. Now, is this an NPM problem? Is it how JavaScript does packages? Or actually, you know what I think it is? Now, I might be wrong. And I'd love for people to jump in. But when we use, so for us back-end engineers, which I don't know, we don't use JavaScript. When we include a dependency, we're very explicit in which dependencies and why and what we're doing with them. I feel like in the front end, there's a lot more of I throw these 200 dependencies in, and it looks beautiful in the end. And is that why npm packages are targeted like this a lot more? Because like I don't even use a tenth of the dependencies in the back end that a lot of front ends use. And so I don't know why it ends up that npm there's always these malicious package, like a lot of these malicious packages and code bases that are in there. I don't know. I've been trying to think about it. Or is it npm itself? Is it JavaScript and how it deals with packages? I'm not sure. It seems more rampant, but maybe it's not even more rampant. I don't know. Bad package security, maybe, but I mean, think about your Go thing. You don't even use packages. I mean, Go modules doesn't do any package management or package security, like, but everybody uses the same 10 repositories. I don't know that it's actually npm's fault, or at least I can't point my finger. All right, here is an old throwback from last week because I needed to give it. This was a security vulnerability, CVE, for CRI-O. And I know that I told you guys about it, but then I didn't have a tab, and I'm sorry about that. That was a misstep on my part. There's a security vulnerability in CRI-O. So if you use CRI-O, which is inherently used for Red Hat, definitely check that you're patched. Again, just like a web browser, make sure your OS is patched. It's very important. So, and this is like the holy grail of container runtime attacks. It allows a container escape and arbitrary code execution as root on the node in your cluster. It's horrifying. Again, never treat containers the same as you would a VM. And I mean, you really shouldn't trust your VM either. Just because this type of attack doesn't happen doesn't mean that there won't be one in the future. And anyways, yeah, layers of security. Just keep that in mind. Layers of security. Security is like an onion. I need to make a shirt about that just because that's fantastic. Let's jump into our cloud news. Actually, rubber cable, that's a fantastic point. That's a fantastic point. A lot of people used to say like, "Oh, well, I'm on a Mac because it's more secure. There's less vulnerabilities for it." And more aptly, it was just that less people used it, and if you're hacking, you're probably doing it for money. And so to do that, you try to hit the most number of systems. So that was Linux and Windows at the time. Well, still is, to be honest. So that's actually really good. The popular platforms get hacked, and npm is the most popular of all code dependencies. Yeah, I think I can say that without a doubt. It's got to be the most popular. Yeah, excellent point though. That might be a fair point on why npm struggles with it more than others do. Because I've seen pip, like vulnerable pip, as well. I think npm and pip are the biggest ones for people getting their bad packages. They're also probably by far the most popular. Also, probably used by more novice as well. At least the pip is, which might make a little bit easier of a attack. All right, let's jump into our Amazon news. Not Amazon news, cloud news. AWS will be our first one this week. Amazon RDS free tier now includes the DB T3 Micro AWS Graviton 2 based DB T4G micro instances in commercial regions. So basically, they expanded their free tier. This is actually pretty cool, so that you have a few new instances to play around with if you need those very specific instance types. Pretty cool. I love seeing the free tier expand. This allows developers to play around and try and experiment without needing to get cost. I mean, it makes sense for them. They want the developers to be really good on their platform. So when at work and they're wondering what platform to use, they're like, oh, well, we're all AWS experts. All right, let's do AWS. That will be the fastest. Amazon RDS now supports Internet Protocol version 6. I just have this up here because it's 2022 and it didn't support IPv6 before this. I didn't realize that. Wouldn't have known until they told me that it obviously didn't. Tell how often I use RDS. All right, AWS. Actually, I use IPv4 anyways because I don't like pain and suffering. So, yeah. Anyways, AWS. This one is a little confusing to me, and I'd love to know your guys' thoughts here on this. AWS Lambda now allows customers to configure up to 10 gigabytes of ephemeral storage for Lambda functions. What the crap would you use this for? Your Lambda functions don't even have enough memory for that. So it went from 512 to, basically 10 terabytes or 10 gigabytes of data. And yes, you can get 10 gigabytes of function memory and 10 gigabytes of container image support. But what would you need? Ephemeral storage is basically storage that's not going to last. It's only for that function. And what are you going to use it for? If you're working on that large of a file, why not just use an S3 file? I don't quite understand. I read this blog article trying to understand this. AWS Lambda function brings new use cases with increased ephemeral storage. I tried to read this to try to understand what I might do with this, because people seem to think that this was amazing. I just couldn't understand. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And maybe this is because I'm not a huge Lambda user. Maybe it's because I write microservices and not Lambda functions. I need help understanding this. Because I still don't. I wasted like half an hour of my life trying to understand why this was a big deal. Anyways. How are Graviton instances different from regular instances? Awesome. Good. Well, one, these save a lot of power and are generally cheaper. Graviton 2 is the second generation of AWS's ARM architecture. So these are running an ARM architecture. So that is one thing that you need to know about the Graviton instances is they're an ARM architecture. You got to run on ARM. But if you can run on ARM, you can run a whole lot cheaper on Graviton than you can on Intel. Now, that's being said, there are some things I actually think, and I haven't done the actual cost analysis, but there are some things that I think could be cheaper on Intel. And that is basically Intel actually has hardware acceleration built into its chips for some things like cryptography. They say crypto, but I say crypto, and then people think Bitcoin. No, I mean like your TLS certificates. So if you're doing heavy MTLS, I don't know that Intels, if leveraged properly, aren't as efficient. I don't know. I'm not saying that they are one way or another, but I could see if you have heavy hardware acceleration, maybe they could actually be more efficient. But in general, the Graviton 2 are cheaper and more efficient, and if you can run on ARM, it's definitely worth a shot. Now, not all workloads, what I found, run the same on ARM. Even if they support ARM, they don't have the same characteristics as they do when running on a 64-bit AMD 64-bit architecture. So it's something to check out. Now, they also have the AMD series, and if you're needing to stick with the AMD 64 architecture, that's also a generally better bang for buck than your Intel. Buffering data for ML. Okay, that's a interesting. You're talking about the ephemeral storage, Javier. Let me quickly catch up. Let's see. There's an untapped market for NPM WebAssembly security, like artifact. Yes, I think X-ray, or rubber cable, you're right, Jubril. I agree. Buffering data for ML. Okay, I like it. Javier, I'm expecting a blog post from you next week on how we're leveraging the 10 gigabytes of ephemeral storage for machine learning pipelines. Actually, I think that might be a good one. Man, you came up in 5 minutes with what I couldn't come up with in half an hour. Strong work. You guys are amazing. All right, let's move on to GCP. Now, last week I talked about how they were releasing a price increase. Let's actually jump over to here. And interestingly enough, they didn't actually claim it as a price increase. They said changes. And look, the fact of the matter is, if it was a price decrease, they would have a big banner that said price decrease. When they made it ultra confusing where I couldn't actually read through it and understand whether the prices were getting more expensive or if they were getting more expensive, it means it's a price increase. Now, I actually found this blog article here. Not this blog article here. Well, we'll come across. Oh, yeah, here we go. Google Cloud alters the deal. And I actually really liked it. If you don't know who Corey Quinn is, he is a bombastic Twitter user. Pretty good if you're into cloud. Definitely better than my content by any means. But yeah, basically, he came to the same conclusion that it doesn't say price increase, but they're convoluted. Yeah, pretty much my same experience. I guess I agree with him. That's why I probably like him. Anyways, that being said, he points out one thing that I hadn't thought about. Azure and AWS don't do this. They haven't. They haven't increased their prices, whereas this is now the second time GCP has increased their prices. Generally, Azure and AWS have decreased their prices over time. So it's definitely interesting. And, not only that, they fired all their support staff. I don't know. GCP seems like it's struggling in the last little bit. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, which is sad because I actually think the user interface of GCP is my favorite by far. So yeah, anyways. They also released the power of Go in the cloud. So basically with the release of Go 1.18, which is probably the largest release of Go since 2007 when Google created it. Anyways, the fuzzing support is really cool. I'm actually going to have to release a video on it. I think that people need to start using it right now in their GitHub Actions. Awesome, Javier. Let me know when you create the blog post or whatever you create. I'd love to post it in my Discord. If you're not, I don't think that you're in there, which is fine. Love to post it. So make sure you post it on one of my videos in a comment. Absolutely would love it. Definitely thumbs that up. All right. So I was looking through Azure. Azure didn't really have anything super interesting. The only thing that looked slightly interesting was this public preview of user-assigned managed identities in Stream Analytics. I don't use Azure a whole lot, so I don't know if this is really interesting. But it allows you to now use user-assigned managed identities as an authentication mode when connecting inputs and outputs in their Stream Analytics. So it sounds interesting for any of you Azure users, all 6 of you. And that's it for our cloud. That's a good point, Rubber Cable. Maybe it's how they're structuring it a little bit. I don't know. I feel like Azure and AWS actually do a decent amount of R&D. If you look at things like BottleRocket and Firecracker, those are actually pretty cool. That came out of AWS R&D. Think Lambda. Lambda was AWS way before Lambda was a thing on Kubernetes. Now we have these serverless things on Kubernetes, but Lambda was well before that. And honestly, the stuff on Kubernetes was just trying to replicate what they did with Lambda. So I don't know. I don't know that I would agree with that, but maybe. I think Azure for sure. I don't know that I've seen a whole lot out of Azure. I would probably agree with that with Azure. Maybe not with AWS, though. I could be very wrong, though. And I'm sorry if I hurt one of your Azure. I'm not mean, and I'm not saying Azure is bad. Look, I make those jokes all the time. Please, if you do use Azure and love Azure, don't take offense. Yeah, it's just a joke. All right, Shadow Kubernetes IT. If you guys don't know what Shadow IT is, it's basically when developers get a little too involved in IT, and basically the not involved, not the right word, but basically when the clouds have made it really easy to go create a Kubernetes cluster, and the problems that come around this is really actually. Sorry, I didn't announce it. This is now the general discussion blog articles that I found section. Sorry, we're past cloud news. Did you guys see anything else in cloud? Let me know. Let me know if I missed it. Leave a comment. Let me know. Join the chat. Let me know there. Talk about it in the Discord. If you find something throughout the week, you can either tweet at me or drop a link in the Discord, and I generally try to make sure those things come up here in this. Also, if you have a project that you'd like to have shown off at the end of this section, go ahead and leave a tweet. It could be something you work at your company. That's fine. Or it could just be a tool that you found really useful. So make sure to be sending those to me so I can share them with the rest of the community. All right, so Shadow Kubernetes IT. Basically what happens is you have these people going out and creating Kubernetes clusters, and then they're actually a Kubernetes admin and a shadow Kubernetes admin. And basically this provides risks because you have these admin users out there that are deteriorating and not being managed properly. When you're talking about managing them, it's all about trust but verify. You need to be able to track and really this isn't about not trusting your customers or not trusting your employees. It's about providing that security and trust to your customers. It's about protecting their data. It's not that your user or your employee might be doing something bad with it. It's more that you need to be able to track it. So if something like Okta happens, you can go and protect your users to the best of your ability. So that's what it really is about. Crypto mining using the company's AWS budget. Okay, so there are definitely bad employees as well. Don't hire the rubber cable. No, I'm just joking. Anyways, but they're definitely. So anyways, that's basically this is about how to help prevent these shadow Kubernetes clusters. And I think it's a good read if you haven't thought about it before or your company hasn't. It's a little simplistic because, I mean, there's actually a lot of tools in the cloud to limit who and what can create resources and what type of resources. But if you're not familiar with it, it's definitely a good starting point. MDN. All right, so when I was learning to program, MDN was a resource I went to a lot. So I'm a self-taught software engineer, if you guys don't know. It's a place I went to a lot. And I know that, you know what? I'm signing up for the $5 a month. I don't actually use it much anymore, but this is a way for me to give to something that I think is a valuable resource to the community as a whole. So yeah, you can sign me up for the $5 a month. That's I'll be doing that. I actually only found it yesterday, so I haven't actually signed up yet, but I'll be signing up. It gives some cool perks like offline. Maybe it doesn't give offline until you do the 10. No, it gives offline here. Yeah, MDN offline. Really cool. Love to support what Mozilla is doing here. And I think it's a great resource for people. So, yeah. AWS Game Tech Keynote. Okay, actually, that's a really good one. Next week. I actually did. I have gone over some of that, and it's taken me a little while to digest some of it. So, there's things that I'm very comfortable with, like, hey, this is what happened. There are other things like what happened with Okta, where I spend an hour tracking down and trying to understand what happened. And then there's things like the AWS Game Tech keynote that I'm interested in like a personal level, but professionally don't have a whole lot of experience and haven't talked about much. Next week, I'll talk about it. I'll talk what I know. Understand that what I know is very little because I'm a dum-dum sometimes. Most of the times. So, Nomad I have used Nomad. I like Nomad. There's problems with Nomad, but I like Nomad. I think Nomad has a lot of really cool things that they did right that Kubernetes didn't out of the box. Well, Kubernetes was designed for Google. You got to understand that. And because of that, it has some very things. I actually have a history on most people talk about Borg, and then they don't talk about Omega. That was the middle thing before then Kubernetes was released. And there's a lot of history that goes into why Kubernetes works the way Kubernetes works, and a lot of it is that it was designed for Google. Now they've worked very hard from Nomad, or not from Nomad, but from Borg to Omega to Kubernetes, to make it more general purpose. And they've done a pretty good job at it. But Nomad said, hey, we saw what you did, and we're going to just start this from the ground up. I actually think Nomad has it has some problems too. This is not me selling out for it. But yeah, it's pretty cool. All right. So, GitHub launches a new algorithmic feed. I initially jumped on the exact same bandwagon as all of these people did. I don't need to see recommendations nor activity of people I don't follow. I don't want an algorithmic feed. I generally agree with this. I think GitHub needs 2 feeds, though, because I was looking at their algorithmic feed, and it's actually kind of cool. If you want to jump on GitHub and just discover something new, it's a cool feed. But it should be a separate feed, not on my homepage, that it can be like, discover something new. So I initially was very angry, and then I came around to, no, I want both. I want this because I want to go to Kubernetes, and then I want to click on discover projects like this. And I want to do those types of things. So it is cool. Or like, hey, we saw that, all of these are your dependencies, and guess what? You don't follow this person, but they released a new project, and we see that you use all of their dependencies. That would be cool, but I don't want it on my main feed because my main feed is something sacred for people that I follow and things that I work on. That's it. I don't want it to be anything else. Isn't what a security issue? Google doesn't actually use. No, I look. I'm not a Googler, so I can't say for 100%. I'm fairly positive that Google uses Kubernetes-ish. I don't believe they use mainline Kubernetes. I do believe that they use mostly Kubernetes, and this comes down to sharding. Basically, Kubernetes can't scale eventually, and then you start sharding into millions of clusters. Not millions, thousands maybe. Thousands of clusters. Actually, Lyft has if you're wanting to talk about this, Lyft has a really great blog article on how they went from one cluster to thousands of clusters, and that's generally the same path everybody walks. And the problem is they can't effectively cluster that many machines. And there's a couple reasons behind it. There's etcd and there's how they cluster. So clustering and how you cluster is actually a fantastic topic, which if you guys watched my how to build a database, I'm going to do that, or building a database from scratch. I'm going to do that. I'm going to learn a whole lot from doing it. And then some of you might have seen a project Gary that I've kind of played around with. We're going to build Kubernetes from scratch, but we're not going to make all the same decisions Kubernetes did. We're not just recreating it. We're going to actually think about each thing, like how we cluster and how it could be different. And we're all going to write it, and we're going to learn about these different topics that go into Kubernetes, because a lot of people think about like the API server and the statically deployed manifests and things, but then they don't even think about how in the end Kubernetes has to cluster. That's one of the things it has to do. Kubernetes also has to have a redundant storage that provides strongly consistent storage. So think etcd. So all of these things are really cool and really fascinating, and the decisions made on how to handle some of those things affect later things. So anyways, yep, absolutely. Oh, the code pilot feature. Yeah, I don't think that this possibly. I don't think that it should run on private. I mean, like, that's really easy. Like, that's a really easy thing to say, like, your thing doesn't run on private repositories. This is, I mean, you're right, it could do that, but they should have security things in place to make sure that their notifications don't work on private repositories. That would be my assumption. All right. Surprise, surprise. I didn't put this in the security because I just found it funny. Printers are vulnerable to remote code execution. Now, I'd love to see you, I have an HP printer. I'd love to see you execute code on my printer. First, it's on a separate network, as all of my IoT is. But second, the thing is slow as garbage. Like, I think that the first iPhone is faster than that thing is. So, like, I don't know what code you're going to execute, but it's going to be very, very slow. But you should patch your printer, I guess. I don't know. Don't connect it to the internet. OpenShift 4.1 or 4.10 is released. This releases with CRI-O 123. Like I said, CRI-O had a security vulnerability. Make sure you're patched. And Kubernetes 123. Go watch my patch notes if you don't know what's cool in 123. Yeah. And then this, a new Linux kernel bolsters random number generation. If you guys, I find this interesting. You guys might not. Random number generation is actually hard. There's this whole argument of pre-seeding versus actually generating good random numbers, and the big deal with what happens when your pre-seed fails and your security takes a hit. Anyways, they're looking at actually building better random number generation into the Linux kernel for dev random. Yeah, so cool, interesting. Another interesting one here is leveraging Kubernetes network policies for securing your applications. This also kind of goes into like API gateways and things like that. But this is, network policies is built into Kubernetes, so you don't even have to leverage something like a API gateway or service mesh to start securing those. And they're pretty simple to use. So if you haven't used them, definitely check this out. All right, and then here's a really quick MTLS guide. If you guys don't know what MTLS is, and I know this is for Spring Boot microservices, but MTLS is basically where, instead of your classic TLS is where the server is known, but the user is unknown, MTLS says both are known entities. And it's really good for microservices if done properly. I've seen security analysts actually argue about it because a lot of times it's not done properly. I read this. I'm not a security professional. Seemed like a really good intro, especially if you use Spring Boot. I thought it sounded like read like a good intro, even if you don't use Spring Boot. I don't use Spring Boot. Yeah. Anyways, last topic before I have to go and take the cat to the vet is the fragile open source ecosystem isn't ready for protestware. You should read this, but there's a lot of anti-war overlays and messages of solidarity for Ukraine. And all of these things I support. And, if you put them in your README, it would be great. But some of these even went as far as to have malicious data wipers if your computer was running in Russia or Belarus. Maybe that's going a little overboard. The problem is you're hurting the trust of open source, and open source works better when it's trusted, and you're injuring that trust. And if you're a maintainer, I would highly recommend you don't do this. Put it in your README. That would be great. Put it on your website. Put it in your README. I 100% support you. As you can see, the icon for my thumbnails for these news sections. Do it. Don't cannibalize your software though. Add things in there so Russia IPs can't download it. That's fine. Don't care. But don't sabotage your own project. And actually, if you remember, a couple months ago, I actually reported on a guy named Merrick, just like me. Us Merricks, we have to stick together, who actually sabotaged his own work because large companies were using it and he wasn't getting paid for it, and he felt like he was getting taken advantage of. I still disagree with him because he did it in a malicious way where, he actually sabotaged other people's projects that were running in production. And that's not the way to do it. I feel for those people, and I feel for the Ukrainians. I don't think that sabotaging your own open source project is the way to go. Oh wow, rubber cable. That's really cool. You used dongles with RF receivers to use background static as preceders. That's actually a really cool little tidbit. Thank you for throwing that out there. Those are the really cool things that you can get into when you get into the nitty-gritty of computer science. And that's also the really fun things. That's actually really, really cool. If you remember last week, I actually talked about there's people trying to chipify using silk. Like actual real silk from silkworms. I think silkworm. Anyways, because it's not perfect when you shine light through it. Anyways, to provide random numbers. Oh, rubber cable. I actually reported on the university getting banned from the Linux kernel. That's a really good point in bringing that up. They basically tried, or did in one case, and tried in some other cases, to sabotage an open source project and got themselves banned. They were trying to do it for science, but generally when you do something like that, you let at least one of the maintainers know. Say, hey, I want to see if I can get this through and see how it would work. And then that maintainer gives you permission. If you want to do that to one of my open source projects, like the NullDB that's out there, go ahead and contact me first. And if I have some other maintainers that you could be testing, that type of thing I would be fine with for research perspectives. But yeah, the university didn't do that. They did a really bang up job of doing it the absolute wrong way, kind of like Okta handled it. The security vulnerability is going to happen. It's just how you handle it that's important. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for me today. If you made it here, go ahead and hit that like button. I'd appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for joining, chatting. You guys are fantastic. Absolutely love you. Absolutely enjoy doing this. And I hope to see you guys next week. Thanks for joining. Thanks for hanging out. Have yourselves